If you've been following BreadTube recently, you've noticed a kind of debate brewing about the nature of BreadTube and the left tube community more broadly, what the responsibility of the people therein is, especially the big creators, but also small creators and viewers. You know, how to build a community. Should BreadTube even be a community? These are debates that are really happening, and I kind of want to add my perspective of somebody who's a relatively new YouTuber slash BreadTuber, and as somebody who has a bit of experience in the mainstream media and can offer why BreadTube and why YouTube is such a key, potential venue for the left. And so my name's Chris Duavalis. For those who don't know me, I have a PhD in Canadian history. I've done a lot of extensive traditional media work in writing, in radio, on television, digital, what have you. I've done a lot, and that's been a great experience. It's been great to bring left-wing ideas into the mainstream media when possible, but those narratives are extremely crafted, even when you're part of the process. There are certain constraints on you, for example, being an interviewee with a mainstream journalist, or being, part of a panel show where the host really dictates the pace of the questions and dictates the parameters of debate. And YouTube, for me, as somebody who comes from that world, was an excellent venue to have free expression and a wide-ranging expression, both on the topics I cover, but how I cover those topics. And it was around the time that I created this channel that some people suggested, hey, you should post your stuff to BreadTube. And, you should visit BreadTube and see what they're making. And I didn't know it existed. I knew some of the creators like ContraPoints and HBomb and PhilosophyTube and some others, but I didn't know about BreadTube, either the concept or the subreddit. And so I went there and it was an instant hit with me. And my content did very well there. In fact, a lot of my early content, if it got any traction at all, it was either from my existing friend bases on Facebook and Twitter or what have you, or it was on BreadTube and other left-leaning subreddits. So for me, it was a great space. And it got me thinking about how BreadTube is great, but we need to do a lot more. Because I felt that BreadTube had the potential to really be a counterbalance to the right. And so I made a video a little bit ago talking about the need for more left-wing YouTube channels. And I also wrote an article for a Canadian online media outlet basically arguing the same thing, suggesting that a lot of the recent stories about the right-wing rabbit hole, say that 3 times fast, on YouTube is in part driven, of course, by dark money and, of course, by secretive interests, PragerU and a lot of groups misrepresenting themselves and their nature. But it's also driven by a system of collaboration of right-wing creators, of matching tags and of matching topics and of creating systems of Venn diagrams where they share a lot of subscriber bases and they share a lot of viewer bases. And in so doing, it creates an opportunity for them to kind of game the algorithm a little bit, massage the algorithm a little bit, and create a situation in which they share that circle of content. People will go from one right-wing creator to another, to another, to another. Often they start with somebody relatively mainstream, and bam, before you know it, they're on alt-right, hellscape, right? And we've talked about that, and some people have, never escaped. Some people never will. Some people have, and have mental and emotional scars because of it. But it's an incredibly powerful tool. And on the left, we don't so much do that. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why we've been having this discussion. And so a few days ago, Gutjan made a point that the bigger creators on YouTube maybe have a kind of general responsibility to help start this process, to help continue this process that they've started, to really bring along more than the 6 or 10 or 12 big creators, and to build a series of medium and large and extremely large creators to create this left-wing ecosystem on YouTube to at least offer something of a challenge to the right. I'm under no illusion that because we don't have dark money, because we don't have institutional power behind us in the same way, that creation will never necessarily match what you see from the Rubens and the PragerUs and the what have you, but we can at least give it the old college try, if you will. And I think that, this discussion about big creators have an individual responsibility, that's a whole nother debate. But I do feel that the larger creators in general could do more to help usher in a broader and deeper BreadTube community, a broader and deeper left-wing community on YouTube of creators. I do think that's the case. And I want to highlight a couple examples that have affected me personally. The first one is David Doyle. I don't know if you guys follow David Doyle. I don't know if you guys consider him a BreadTuber. I don't know if David considers himself a BreadTuber. But he's a very large YouTuber who covers electoral politics, largely American, but also Canadian, even though he is Canadian. And he's been very successful at it for a number of years. And he had me on his show when I was a very small creator, less than 1,000 subscribers. And that support, introducing me to new subscriber bases, legitimizing my channel as something that was respectable when talking about electoral politics here on YouTube, really made a massive difference. And I know not everyone can do that. And I know, not every channel is set up in such a way that you can interview people like you can on a politics channel, where you have, you can have an interview session. I know ContraPoints and H-Bomb and PhilosophyTube, their channels aren't necessarily set up for that. But that moment, that outreach by David meant the world to me and really helped to start my channel even on the modest path of growth that it's on. And I also have to give a shout out to Peter Coffin, who cited one of my recent videos in his, and he shared it on his community tab, and he noted it on social media, and that drove significant traffic, thousands of extra views to my video, on a video that probably would have gotten less than half the views it got without his support. And these are the sorts of things that really mean a lot to people. And again, it can't happen on every video, but it's not a whole lot of extra work for these creators. I mean, in one case, it was just David having me on one of his episodes, and that was an episode he was probably going to make anyway, talking about those issues, so he had me on. And Peter Coffin just basically, cited my recent video because it sort of talked about the same things he was talking about. And he said, well, after you watch this, go watch his video. It's a bit of an accompaniment to my video. And that was a great thing. And also Peter in general, specifically trying to, promote people and promote, diverse content creators especially, is just the best. So I really respect that. And so I feel there needs to be more of that. I feel that Gutchin and some other people have made great points, that there's an opportunity here for the upper echelon of BreadTube to spend a bit of their social capital towards egalitarian ends. And they're not all going to be able to do that in the same way and to the same extent, but they should be doing a little bit more, because I feel there's room to grow BreadTube and their social capital, their legitimacy, their, credibility, their, ability to reach across the various silos, because of course, as we know, people like H-Bomb doesn't just cover electoral politics or anything of that sort. He really covers a whole bunch of different silos of progressive thought. And so someone like him has the ability to introduce creators not just to his massive audience, but to different subsections of progressive YouTube. There's so much opportunity there that really could be seized. But it's not just about the big creators. It's about, one, the people who aren't making videos yet. Because what I noted in my writing and my earlier video on this was that, if you're thinking of dipping your toe into content creation, I want you to do it. I want you to try. Because that's one of the goals here, especially if you're covering something that's undercovered on YouTube. Whether it's Canadian politics, I saw that as a niche that was undercovered, or whether it's talking about the experiences and challenges of marginalized people, or whether it's talking about, topics that are too niche, quote unquote, for mainstream media or mainstream social media. Whatever the reason, I want you to create that content. I can't promise it'll be well received by everyone, but I can promise that there will be some people who really enjoy it. And you'll help to broaden and complexify and really improve the general BreadTube experience. And I think that's very important. We need more content creators. We do, especially on topics that aren't being covered. And so another issue, and this was talked about a few days ago on the BreadTube subreddit, was that, sure, the big BreadTubers could do a bit more to cross-promote and collaborate with the smaller creators and all of that. But, BreadTube consistently upvotes those creators and old videos of those creators, sometimes years and years and years old, and it kind of takes up the front page. And this isn't a conspiracy by those big BreadTubers. They're not doing that. they're maybe reaping some benefit from it, but they're not the ones doing that. It's the community making the decision to highlight those videos. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And people can watch what they want to watch. But if you do feel smaller creators need a little bit more oxygen, then, choosing how you approach the BreadTube subreddit and choosing how you approach your content curation is important. I'm not suggesting that you have a responsibility to go watch a small BreadTuber today. But I do suggest that if you find content you like from big BreadTubers, look around to see if somebody's offering something similar yet different on a smaller scale. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll like it even more than the big creators. Because one debate here that I definitely have a position on is that YouTube is not meritocratic. And so the argument that the big creators are where they are because they're good and the small creators are where they are because they're not good, really, it's the antithesis of BreadTube and of socialism and of a critique of capitalism, a critique of this idea of meritocracy. Those creators are where they are because they're good, certainly yes. But there are many creators, due to the realities of the algorithm and of the sheer size of YouTube, who create great content, sometimes on par with those great creators, but don't get spotlighted. And greater collaboration and greater effort from the community to find and nurture and elevate those creators can only be a good thing. So that's where I'm at, guys. As a kind of relatively new BreadTuber, I have to say that this discussion has actually been quite healthy and quite good. There's been some disagreements from folks. There's been some debates about merchandising and all of these things. I don't want to get into that. I think creators can sell their merch. I got no issue with that at all. But, I do feel, not on an individual basis, I don't want to tell any individual creator what they need to do or not do. I do feel the bigger BreadTubers have a general responsibility to lead this community. And if they don't feel it's a community right now, they should help make it one. And I feel people who are smaller creators and people who are on the edge of being creators have to continue to push the boundaries of good content and bring new perspectives. And I feel that the viewers on BreadTube, the viewers of LeftTube, have to do a good job of helping out people to get promoted on the algorithm. Watch the content of small creators. Watch the whole video. Help them with their click-through rates. Help them with their retention rates. Leave a comment. Like the video. Share it on Reddit if it's not being shared on Reddit. Share it on Facebook if it's not being shared on Facebook. Those kinds of forms of labor, in a sense, of communal labor, can really help people, and it's something we can all do. It's something we can all do, and again, it's something the right does. It's something the right does, and almost ironically, the right on YouTube has a better sense of collective responsibility to their community than BreadTube does. And that's a real problem. So we have to do better.